Dear people watching and listening, Assalamu alaikum. Kindly like and share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please support my channel by contributing to my Patreon account so that I can continue making the audiobook series. Salah ad-Deen al-Ayubi, Volume 2, The Establishment of the Ayubid State. Chapter 1, The Family of Salah ad-Deen and His Upbringing. The lineage of Salah ad-Deen. Salah ad-Deen belonged to a prominent Kurdish family of noble origin. This family belonged to a Kurdish tribe that was regarded as one of the noblest in lineage, a clan that was known as Ar-Rawadiya. They were originally from the city of Dawin, which was located at the furthest border of Azerbaijan, near the city of Tiflis, also known as Tbilisi in Armenia. The Ayubids were descended from Ayub ibn Shadi, and Ibn al-Athir regarded them as the noblest of the Kurds, because none of them were ever enslaved. When Salah ad-Deen's father Najmuddin Ayub and his paternal uncle Asad ad-Din Shirkuh came from Iraq, they were not shepherds. Rather, they had a great deal of experience in political and administrative affairs. But some Ayubids tried to deny their Kurdish origins and claim Arab blood in general, claiming to be descended from Banu Umayyah in particular. Whatever the origin of the Ayubids, they emerged in the Islamic East in the 6th century Hijri, that is the 12th century Common Era, when their great-grandfather Shadi was appointed to some administrative position in the citadel of Tikrit, which was allocated to Bahruz al-Khadim, one of the emirs of the Seljuk Sultan Muhammad ibn Malik Shah. Tikrit was located on the right bank of the Tigris, north of Samura, and controlled the main transportation routes between Iraq and Syria. Most of its inhabitants were Kurds. Shadi was transferred there with his two sons, Najmuddin Ayub and Asad ad-Din Shirkuh. He gradually climbed the administrative ladder until he was given a permanent post in charge of the garrison. When he died, he was succeeded by his son Najmuddin Ayub. It is very strange that some historians go out of their way in their research to attribute Salah ad-Din to a chain of forefathers that ends with Mudar, who was descended from Adnan. It is as if by means of this research, which is contrary to academic standards, not to mention pure facts, they want to connect every non-Arab genius to an Arabic lineage, as if all virtues and noble characteristics belong exclusively to the Arabs, and as if the non-Arab Muslims, according to their short-sighted way of thinking, cannot build glory, establish civilizations, or leave great legacies, or support Islam with the sword and by the means of their words. If we look into history and research the great men who built Islamic civilization, we will discover that the many nations who entered Islam contributed to Islamic civilization. Muhammad al-Fatih, Nuruddin, and Imad ad-Din were Turks. Nizam ul-Mulk was Persian. The Ayubid family were Kurds. Yusuf ibn Tashfin was a Berber. Allah honored the Arabs with the Islamic message, and He also honors those who are sincere towards His religion. We are opposed to blind tribalism and hateful racism. The Islamic principle is, the believers are but brothers in Islamic religion. Quran, chapter 49, verse 10. And the Islamic method is fixed and cannot change. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Quran, chapter 49, verse 13. Najmuddin served the Seljuk Sultan Muhammad ibn Malik Shah, and he saw his honesty, maturity, wisdom, and chivalry, so he appointed him as governor of the citadel of Tikrit, and he did the job well. controlling its affairs in the best manner. He expelled evildoers and bandits from the land until the people were able to do business in safety and security. Similarly, Abu Shammah stated that Asad ad-Din Shirkuh was one of the emirs who were favored by the Seljuks, who allocated to him a large amount of land in and around Tikrit, which brought him a yearly income of around 900 dinars, which was a large amount by the standards of that era. The birth of Salah ad-Din. Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi was born in 532 Hijri, that is 1137 Common Era, in the citadel of Tikrit, an ancient city that is nearer to Baghdad than Mosul. A strong citadel was built in the highest part of the city, overlooking the Tigris. It was built in ancient times by the Persian kings on a rocky outcrop and used as a weapons depot and a lookout to keep watch for the enemy. It was conquered by the Muslims in 16 Hijri, at the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. May Allah be pleased with him. In an amazing twist of fate, Salah ad-Din was born on the day when Mujahid ad-Din Bahruz, the governor of Baghdad, ordered Najm ad-Din and his brother Shirkuh to leave Tikrit, because Shirkuh, the paternal uncle of Salah ad-Din, had killed one of the commanders of the citadel. That happened because of a woman whom the commander had molested. Shirkuh avenged her honor when she called on him to help her, and he killed him. But Bahruz was very confused and did not know what to do. Should he keep them with him or order them to leave? If he let them stay, he was afraid that they would be subject to the revenge of the commanders and thus harmed. So he had no alternative but to order them to leave. He summoned them and expressed his fears for them, and he asked them to leave Tikrit that night. The two men set out for Mosul, taking their families with them. It was in the Huda of Najm ad-Din that his son Yusuf, known as Salah ad-Din, was born. The author of Wafiyat al-Ayyan described what took place thereafter. Ayub felt pessimistic about his newborn Salah ad-Din, and he thought of killing his son when the child was crying as they left the city. But one of his followers warned him against this action, saying, "O master, I see that you are very pessimistic about this child. What wrong has he done? What has he done to deserve that from you, when he can neither bring benefit nor cause harm, and he cannot do anything? What happened to you is by the will and decree of Allah. Moreover, you do not know. Perhaps this child will become a king with a great reputation and a high and prominent position. Allah may decree that he should be a man who will play a great role. So let him be, for he is an infant and has done no wrong, and he does not know you are going through grief and stress." Ayub was moved by these words and quickly came back to his senses and followed the path of true Islam. Salah ad-Din's upbringing. The brothers Najm ad-Din Ayub and Shirkuh migrated from Baghdad to Mosul, where they stayed with Imad ad-Din Zangi, who welcomed them warmly and gave them gifts. This welcome and honor was a reward for their sincere attitude, as they had saved him from being killed or captured. That had happened when Imad ad-Din Zangi, the ruler of Mosul, had fought the Seljuks at Tikrit when Bahruz was governor of Baghdad, appointed by the Seljuks. We have already seen that Najm ad-Din Ayub and Shirkuh were in charge of Tikrit and its citadel, having been appointed by Bahruz. The outcome of Imad ad-Din's battle was victory for the Seljuks, and his army had fled from the Seljuk army. During his retreat and withdrawal to Mosul, he passed by Tikrit, and his life and that of his army were in the hands of Najm ad-Din Ayub, the governor of Tikrit at that time. If he wanted, he could let them live, and if he wanted, he could kill them. Najm ad-Din preferred kind treatment over harsh treatment, so he and his brother Shirkuh helped Imad ad-Din and made it easy for him to reach Mosul safe and sound. This kind treatment and noble attitude had a great impact and led to good results in building Ayub's kingdom and establishing the glory of Islam at the hand of Salah ad-Din. When the two men reached Mosul, they were warmly welcomed by Imad ad-Din, as we have seen, and he rewarded them for the good treatment of him in Tikrit. He allocated some land to them so that they could live with him in pride and honor. Under the care of Imad ad-Din, the Ayubid family flourished. Najm ad-Din and his brother Shirkuh became some of the best commanders. Imad ad-Din was killed after that, and Nur ad-Din came to power with the help of the Ayubids. He managed to add Damascus to his kingdom, and it was in Damascus that Salah ad-Din was raised, acquired an Islamic education, and learnt the arts of horsemanship, hunting, archery, and other necessary skills. When Nur-ud-Din Mahmud Zangi conquered Baalbek in 534 Hijri, he appointed Najm ad-Din Ayub as its governor, but the ruler of Damascus, Mujir ad-Din, besieged Najm ad-Din Ayub in Baalbek, and Najm ad-Din wrote to Nur-ud-Din Mahmud and Saifuddin Ghazi, asking them for help, but they were too busy. After a lengthy siege, a peace deal was worked out between the two sides with immediate effect, and he moved to Damascus and became one of its most prominent emirs. Thus Salah ad-Din spent his early childhood in Baalbek in 534 Hijri, that is 1140 Common Era, and he saw and heard from time to time the crusader attacks on Muslim lands. When the crusaders attacked the Bekaa Valley near Baalbek in 546 Hijri, Najm ad-Din and Asad ad-Din Shirkuh stood up to them and defeated them. Najm ad-Din and Asad ad-Din Shirkuh stood up to them and defeated them, capturing some of them. In the same year, Salah ad-Din joined the service of his paternal uncle Asad ad-Din Shirkuh. Asad ad-Din accompanied Nur-ud-Din, who took charge of the Zangids after his father was killed. It seems that Nur-ud-Din realized the military and administrative potential of Salah ad-Din. Abu Shama states that Salah ad-Din came before Nur-ud-Din, and he kissed him and allocated some good land to him, showed his confidence in him, looked after him, drew him close and gave him preferential treatment, and he continued to show potential and caliber that justified his being promoted higher and higher. Nur-ud-Din would send him to his paternal uncle, that is Shirkuh, to consult with him about some matters that had to do with the state, levies, and agricultural issues. Nur-ud-Din always showed an interest in consulting his senior commanders. In modern times, Salah ad-Din would be described as the private secretary of Nur-ud-Din. With regard to how Salah ad-Din was promoted to various posts, Ibn al-Furat explains that to us. Salah ad-Din remained under his father's care until he grew up, and when al-Malik al-Adil Nur-ud-Din took control of Damascus, the Emir Najm ad-Din asked his son Yusuf to serve him, and Salah ad-Din's potentials became clear. Among other things, Salah ad-Din learned the path of good, enjoining what is right and striving in jihad, until he joined his uncle Asad ad-Din Shirkuh on his march to Egypt. Asad ad-Din had full authority in Egypt, and his nephew Salah ad-Din was running affairs directly with the utmost care, sound wisdom, and proper handling. During his father's governorship in Baalbek, Salah ad-Din had studied Islamic knowledge and the arts of war. In addition to his interest in the game of Jokan, a sport of Eastern origin that was played on horseback, which he had inherited from his father, in addition to his interest in religious knowledge. We may conclude from this and from what is mentioned above that during the period in which Salah ad-Din lived in Syria, and before he took up any significant military post, He was watching political and military developments in the Muslim lands, the most important of which was the conflict with the crusaders, and how Nuruddin was relying on his father and paternal uncle Shirkuh. He must have been influenced by these events, even though he did not take part in them, and he must also have developed a sense that he should prepare for the future, especially for the high-level posts in the state. It may be said that Salah ad-Din grew up and was raised in the lap of his family, and learned from his father Najmuddin his brilliance in politics, and from his uncle Shirkuh his courage in war. So he grew up imbued with political acumen and the spirit of war. He also acquired the knowledge of his era. He memorized the Quran, studied fiqh and the hadith, and studied under the leading scholars of Syria and Mesopotamia, including Sheikh Qutbuddin an-Nisaburi. Salah ad-Din was influenced by the Sultan Nuruddin Mahmud, who gave him a brilliant example of sincere devotion and a serious sense of religious responsibility. He learned from him sincerity and self-sacrifice, and how to converse with his Lord in private prayer in his own place of worship, taking from that the spiritual strength to engage in jihad. He inherited from him the leadership of the Islamic venture, and learned from him how to stem the heretical Shiite tide and resist the Crusader invasion. Salah ad-Din grew up in glorious atmosphere, trained in horsemanship and the arts of war and jihad, and practiced political and decision-making skills. During the period that he spent in Damascus after Nuruddin ibn Imad ad-Din Zangi took control of it, the brilliance of Salah ad-Din's character emerged. He was held in high esteem and respected, and his status was like that of the son of the governor of Damascus himself. He appeared before society as a religious, polite, and calm young man, filled with concern for Islam, a characteristic that was instilled in his heart by Nuruddin, who treated him in a very special way. Among the posts that were given to him in Damascus at the time of Nuruddin was the position of head of police. He did the job in the best manner, and was able to purify Damascus of the mischief of thieves and evildoers. Security and stability were restored throughout the city. The people felt that their lives and property were safe, and they enjoyed the blessing of a quiet and decent life. Hassan ibn Numair, who is known as Arqalah al-Dimashqi, expressed his joy at Salah ad-Din being in charge of the police in his city, as he said, "Wait, O thieves of Damascus, for I shall tell you something most sincerely. There has come to you someone who has the name of the Prophet Yusuf, who was known for eloquence and beauty. That one cut the hands of women, but this one cuts off the hands of men." The period that Salah ad-Din spent in Egypt is regarded as one of the greatest periods in which his immense courage and brilliant military skills came to the fore. He stayed with his uncle Asad ad-Din Shirkuh throughout his 3 campaigns against Egypt, and was one of the most brilliant men with him. He demonstrated great genius and unique skill in the arts of war and fighting. With his wisdom, intelligence, and ability to make good decisions, he managed to help his uncle to annex Egypt into Nuruddin's state, after saving the great Egyptian people from the clutches of the heretical Fatimid state. From the above, we may conclude that Salah ad-Din was raised during his early childhood and the second and third decade of his life with noble characteristics and praiseworthy attitudes, and by mixing with the emirs and keeping company with commanders, he learned proper etiquette and the skills of war, concern for Islam, and moral and physical courage. And this is what led to him deserving to be one of those unique characters who shook the world and contributed to shaping an important era of the great history of Islam. When did the Ayubid state begin? Historians differ as to when the Ayubid state began. Some say that it began when Salah ad-Deen al-Ayubi was appointed as the vizier of the Fatimid Caliph al-Adid li-Dinillah in 564 Hijri, that is 1169 Common Era. Others say that it was when the khutbahs in Egypt were once again given in the name of the Abbasid Caliph, which was followed by the death of al-Adid li-Dinillah and the end of the Fatimid Caliphate in 567 Hijri, that is 1171 Common Era. It is true that the authority of Salah ad-Din began when he was appointed as vizier, and he reinforced his position by taking steps to abolish the Fatimid state. But from a legal point of view, he was still subject to the authority of Nuruddin Mahmud, who died soon after that in 569 Hijri, that is 1174 Common Era. Hence, in our view, the year of Nuruddin's death marks the beginning of the Ayubid state, which was recognized by the Abbasid Caliph al-Mustadi Billah in 570 Hijri, that is 1175 Common Era. End of chapter 1.